And I want to mention one other thing about entering art history from this place that's really special. Art history and the methods of art history have gone through several phases and iterations, and approaching it from a place of archaeology and ancient history is really fun because some of the methods that our history has begun to use in the 21st century have been taken from archaeological and anthropological disciplines. This is kind of a vocab list that we can return to. I'm kind of using Olmec art as an entrance into art history with this class for people that maybe don't have a lot of experience with art history. So these are several vocabulary terms that are art history specific. And then I have more anthropological, vaguely anthropological terms on the right. And these will all come up throughout the talk. So let's go into these prompts before we look at more Olmec imagery. I have two prompts that I'm kind of going at art history with here. One is on a sliding scale from uniqueness to idealism. How do each of the images fall? So what does this mean? What I'm referring to is the specificity at hand. So humans have an incredible ability to recognize small differences between objects. AI is getting better and better at it, but even in medicine currently, a lot of, for example, cancer, a lot of cancerous cells are determined cancerous by physical inspection, by inspection. So the human ability to assess things retinally is powerful. And what I'm asking here about, since art history is a visual practice as we're looking at it right now, is the ability for us to recognize, let's say, a portrait, as in the case of the head I first showed next to the Volkswagen, if that is a specific person, or is that a very general, is that just any 40-year-old man from that culture, or are we talking about a specific leader? How unique a person is this, or is it uh, an idealized person with kind of a vague specificity? Could be anybody. It's not really my neighbor. It's somebody maybe I saw at the supermarket, but I can't remember who it is. And how does that engage memory and our feeling of proximity to the work? Right? How does that connect with our sensibility of trust and confidence with um, some kind of engagement with the make believe of art? The second prompt that I want to kind of carry through this Olmec lecture and into some of the other lectures on Mexican art history is, what kind of momentary snapshot is this scene described as? So artists have a choice for the sculpture or art or painting to have a momentary flair to it. In other words, you turn away and you look back and there's a feeling that it could have taken a step. Or is this thing solid? Is this depiction immobile for eternity, for the evening? Is it something sleeping? Is it something passed out? Is it something dead? Is it something that is about to take a step? So this kind of life likeness, um, scene, action, camera type sensibility that we have at our disposal with art is a very important art historical concept to keep in mind. So let's just go through that first prompt of recognizability, and I'm going to use some anachronistic examples from our history. We have Chuck Close on the right, and he's a very informative and instructional artist to use for this idea. We have small, you could say that this painting is made up of accumulation of small moments that are abstract in of themselves and seemingly casual, and yet they coalesce into a specific person from far away. So these art objects aren't they aren't stagnant. Right? Art is not it's one of the ironies and beauties of it in both in history and in the present. There are things that are acted on by our psychologies and our movements. So as we walk closer or farther away, they coalesce or dissolve, for example, which is kind of the paradigm we're talking about with this painting. Um, and they can also act psychically in which where you feel distant from them no matter how close you arrive, or these characters could become more specific as you get closer, or the reverse as you get far away. So there's a physical push and pull engagement occurring. And on the left is something that I've had with me for several years now, and it's simply ways of IDing yellow jackets and wasps, and the slight differences between their backs that allow us or other organisms to recognize who they are, what sex they are, where they are from. So this is just kind of this human ability to recognize combined with um, approachability and recognizability with the human form. These are some more Chuck Close objects. This is a little more classic and engages the history of Impressionism a little bit and the idea of pointillism or divisionist painting. It can be referred to. What happens when you squint your eyes at this? This object has a shimmery. There's a lot of things going that we could talk about here, but for the purpose of this talk, I'm just talking about distance and closeness and accumulation. And again, this is a retinal. I'm coming at this to start with in this talk with a retinal appreciation of how these artworks are functioning. Again, these are made up of small moments, and this is a self-portrait of Chuck Close, who recently passed away several years ago. Um, I had the pleasure of seeing him speak, and he's just a very committed and rigorous artist in his approach. So again, what does distance and closeness have to do with arriving at something? With how do we arrive? Do we arrive from far away or close at the meaning of a particular piece of art? This is the classic kind of impressionist historical context in painting where we have Seurat, a painting of the outdoors and sunlight kind of sparkling and reflecting off of the objects of our world and represented in paint. Um, and below, just to um, kind of turn the corner into this world of art history, I have a value chart, and so artists can get a lot of mileage out of increments of value and shifting them. And so I want us to start to be able to pay attention to these formal properties of an object. Now, another way of talking about, so that's from a painterly way of thinking about an object, and another way of thinking about it is with one of my favorite topics, which is calculus. So calculus has an idea in it, which is as the sides of a polygon approach infinity, we approach a circle. And this is a beautiful concept, and I feel like it relates to the Olmec heads and to sculpture in general, and you could add more sides, and at a certain point, the amount of sides that difference could be made up by how far away you are from the object. So your perspective and your distance could affect your perception of something that is faceted as something that is smooth. And so that's a very simple and clear way of thinking about the distance someone has from a monument. Um, Classically in math, we talk about sides as n, as the variable n. So this object has 12 ends, has 12 sides. And as we squint or move far away, it metamorphosizes another content idea that art can turn on into a different shape. And so here we are back at the Olmec head. This is one of my pictures from the museum in Mexico City. Um, and I think it's worth it to spend some time looking at this artwork in terms of of what I have just been speaking about. So after all these words that I've said, what is the scale? If there's some scale of uniqueness and idealism, where does this fall? Or does it even make sense to think about it in terms of that? And why would it not? Um, but we can at least begin to look at this with an old school art history eye and say, you know, this shape has a quality to it that, or even more, this, I guess that's an arabesque or S curve, has just as much to do with its shapeness as it does as an identifying characteristic, right? So what I'm talking about is how transparent is the metaphor that's being used to describe a face, right? This is not a face. This is made out of stone. So everything, all the moves that the artist has made are metaphors to deal with our belief in the thing. And the things like a S shape or this shape could be thought of as stylized or idealized to a point where they lift off from the transparency of us just experiencing this as a illusionistic illustration, and they begin to speak in a language that's read in a different way, right? This will become more clear throughout these lectures. So now I'm going to go back to our two prompts. So the first one was this uniqueness to idealism, which I've just kind of laid out through looking at Chuck Close and distance with calculus and the approach to an artwork, and kind of drawing a parallel between distance and idealism, between distance and vagueness, uh, and closeness and uniqueness. But that, of course, could be those variables could be inverted. But really just kind of stirring the pot here and getting us thinking about parallels between these emotional qualities and these physical qualities of these artworks. So the second prompt is about what kind of momentary snapshot is the scene described as.